Chris Shannick, CYInterview, covering Las Vegas and the world. If you haven't already, please hit that like button below and please hit that subscribe button below to keep up with everything we have going on here at CYInterview in Las Vegas and beyond. We greatly appreciate it. Today we're going to revisit our CYInterview with actor Ron Perlman. He's known for his role in the hit TV series Sons of Anarchy, and here it is.
You're on CYInterview. I'm Jay Billstein. With us today on CYInterview is an actor who can, without any exaggeration, be termed inimitable. His body of work is diverse, his talent rich, and his performances soulful. He's written a book, Easy Street the Hard Way, which has been out for a few months now, and if you haven't read it, you're truly missing out. He's none other than the great Ron Perlman. Ron, glad to have you with us here on CYInterview.
Thank you. Thank you for that great introduction.
Well, your body of work merits it, and I'm sure if people pick up your book, they're going to see that you have some remarkably powerful insights that go well beyond acting. But let's get started. Ron, it's clear from your book, Easy Street the Hard Way, that your father, who passed away far too young, had an indelible and very positive impact on your life. Could you speak to how your father's influence affected your acting trajectory?
I mean, he was just a very charismatic guy in life. You know, he had a very, very winning personality, and so he was an easy guy to be in the presence of. And he was a really easy guy to believe when he said something. And if he was a fan of something, like everything that he was passionate about became contagious because he was just one of these dudes that makes you relax and feel like you're in good company, in good hands, and that there's no agenda and there's nobody trying to sell you anything. So he was a great dad in that regard, but also he just, I mean, the things that he spent his time admiring and relishing and relaxing in as a counterpoint to the hard work he put in trying to raise a family were things that meant a great deal to me then, and then even more to me in his passing, as a way to first and foremost keep the bond going and remain close to him, even though he was not physically here. But then, as I grew older and watched, our culture evolve, I realized that it didn't evolve into anything bigger than the things that he loved. In fact, everything devolved. And so the book, if anything, is me chronicling why the good old days really were the good old days, and what we've lost in the name of progress. And gets very angry toward the end of it because there are so many aspects of the decencies of a mom and pop kind of world, which he was completely representational of, because he was a really lower middle class guy who probably had more to admire than, the 600 people that congregate our Congress and our boardrooms. He was, he was the embodiment of a better time and a better set of values that have been kind of given a back seat to things that are what I term in the book as false idols, things that we're all wrapped up in trying to achieve these days that take us away from the real golden stuff.
It's interesting to go with that. Part that comes out in the book, I think in one page you were writing, and you talked almost about getting to a post-apocalyptic world where thousands of corporations would be boiled down to like 4 corporations that you might see in a cheesy B movie, but that remarkably it seems that's where we're heading to, and that's one of the things that I picked up in the book. But on a positive note, besides your dad, you also have run into people, I would dare say, at least as it comes through in the book, some very remarkable individuals who had a strong impact on your trajectory. One was a professor, I think the head of the theater department when you were in college. If I remember, it was the Hay Goldberg moment in the book. You called this gentleman the Damon Runyon of the Ivy League. Could you speak about him for a moment and his influence on you?
Well, his name was Ralph Wamanian. He grew up in Provincetown, Rhode Island, Providence, Rhode Island, from a family of immigrants from Armenia. Rough guy, rough background, came from the streets, wanted something better in life, so saw himself through college and got himself a PhD at the University of Iowa. During that time that I was famous for creating this haven for writing geniuses, out of which sprung Kurt Vonnegut, Edward Albee, to name a few. And Ralph was part of that thing. And took a shot at being a playwright, ended up spending most of his career as an educator. And that's where I got lucky, because the way he delineated what it was about the literature, particularly literature of the theater, starting with the Greeks, Aeschylus, etc., and all the way through Samuel Beckett, who was still writing when I was in college, original plays, gave you a sense of how the human condition can be celebrated in a way that I really could relate to, because it had to do with walking into a theater and being transfixed by something mind-blowing in terms of its traumatic impact, but then again by shedding light onto a series of truths that kind of bound everyone together, which is really when culture is acting in its best own interest. That's what it really is, and that's why it's glorious, and that's why it's, one of the things that kind of save us from a life of complete banality and and rote. So I already kind of had eyes toward the performing aspects of the theater, but what he did was he lit a fire under the underpinnings of it, which was the literature of it, and took me through every generation of writers, from the Greeks all the way through the religious writings, all the way through the Renaissance writings, all the way through Restoration, all the way through early 20th century, Russian world writing of Ibsen, Chekhov, et cetera, all the way through to the present day, which was at that time the 60s. And there was still a very vibrant theater happening in the 60s throughout the world. Tennessee Williams was still alive and writing. Eugene O'Neill had just passed. Beckett, Pinter, Günter Grass. It was just an amazing time, with a lot of incredible ideas being flung at you, and real explosions of expression, which completely sparked your imagination and inspired you to want to be a part of something bigger than yourself.
Do you believe that coming from Washington Heights that you were able to, I believe his name is Ralph, but you mentioned his name was, I guess, Rafi.
Yeah, Rafi Arzamanian.
God, do you believe that because he came from a hard Scrabble background, that based on the kind of neighborhood you came from, that it made all these tremendous works and these writers and these works of literature more accessible because it was kind of a visceral connection, background to background?
Well, I mentioned personality, with my dad, that's the outer wrapping upon which, if you look, we'll kind of invite you to look deeper into what's inside the package. And Ralph was that. I mean, Ralph was, to me, one of the funniest men I ever met, one of the most irreverent men I ever met. He used to show up at school. I talk about this in the book. in a pair of white Levi's Converse sneakers, a T-shirt, and binoculars around his neck, because when he got finished teaching, his whole schedule was based around making the second aqueduct or Belmont, because he was a degenerate horse player, and taught me how to handicap. So he was really Damon Runyon, but he was also Eugene O'Neill, because as a writer he was gorgeous, and as somebody who appreciated the nuances of great literature, he was gorgeous.
Now let's. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No. That's it. I'm done.
Let's just look at a moment how this kind of these formative experiences with your dad, with this remarkable professor of theater, impacted upon you. I think we could say arguably, at least the general public, that you're best known for three bodies of work. For your role as Vincent on the 1980s television program Beauty and the Beast, as the protagonist in the Hellboy films, and as Clay Morrow in the television series Sons of Anarchy. Does it ever strike you now, looking back, that, hey, I'm a three-time icon?
I just don't spend a lot of time taking stock of how mind-blowing the gifts are that I've been given, although I'm very cognizant of them all the time. But I'm also a little bit, I don't know, a little bit superstitious. Like if I ever stop to think about how great everything is, it'll all end. So I just keep moving forward. One of the reasons why I thought Sinatra was possessed greatness in some of the more unobvious senses, because everybody chronicles his greatness for the obvious reasons. But when you saw him interviewed, he basically he was a very complex guy. I mean, he had an arrogance. He understood his gift and his responsibility toward making sure that gift was properly. But at the same time, he always thought of himself as just a vocalist, just the same way as the guy who plays the trumpet is just the brass. He's part of a big compendium of sound and fury that, when it comes out, is ultimately beautiful. And Sinatra just thought of himself as the vocalist. And I never forgot that when I first heard him interviewed, and how he explained himself as that. Hanging out on the bus, going from date to date, hanging out with the guys, and thinking of himself, here are the reed players, here's percussion over here, here's the different aspects of what makes up an orchestra, and here was the vocalist. And I've always thought of myself as just a representational artist who basically changes with every passing opportunity. So no, I don't think of myself in any kind of iconic ways.
Got you. Well, the last 15 years on television has certainly, in a pop culture context, in a TV context, seen the creation of some icons, particularly some memorable anti-heroes, whether it was Tony Soprano, protagonized by the late James Gandolfini on The Sopranos, Walter White, played by Bryan Cranston on Breaking Bad, more recently Frank Underwood on House of Cards, with Kevin Spacey inhabiting that role. And then there's your Clay Morrow on Sons of Anarchy, who surely shares a pantheon with these characters. How hard was it to play Clay in terms of dealing with constructing an individual with such a dark side and having to inhabit that role over a long period of time?
He became hard to play toward the devolution of his character. That was a choice that the writer made in terms of his trajectory and his ultimate demise. he became really hard to play because he became a guy that I couldn't find anything to admire about. Although I kept bending and recrafting, probably much to the dismay of the writer, so that I could go out in a way where I was able to admire even his most nefarious acts, because they were based in his own version of the greater good. And I always looked at Clay as a hero, as somebody who had a huge responsibility at his feet. You know, the safety and security of a community, of a family, of blood, and that, like the Godfather says, women and children can make mistakes, men can't. You know, this was a guy who took that credo really seriously. I'm going to do what I got to do, and I'm never going to second guess it, and I'm never going to let anybody else second guess it, because whether I'm right or wrong, I truly believe I'm doing the best thing to keep my family secure, safe, and prosperous. And so that was what I needed to feel in order to play Clay. Toward the end, I kept running out of abilities to be able to feel that, because he got very dark and he got very self-centered, and I stopped kind of admiring the wiring. And so luckily at the very, very end, I feel that there were a couple of moments of redemption. There was at least an attempt at redemption. But, you know, I've played some very dark characters, but there's always something about their psychology that I admire, and I really can't play anyone unless I do. So that's what made playing Clay difficult, was finding a way to play him full out and service what his role was in the big scheme of things, without completely losing respect for him. From Ron.
In Easy Street the Hard Way, your book, you speak about Sons of Anarchy, and what you wrote made me kind of feel that by and you've been explaining some of it, by the end of the run on the series, I almost got the feeling that for you it could have been better termed Sons of Acrimony. Looking back now, a little bit more distance from it, do you still feel the same way about how things ended up?
There was a trajectory. You know, there was definitely a trajectory. There were things that became very uncomfortable about the work situation there, and personal and uncomfortable, and of course they were completely, hugely overshadowed by the amount of good that the show did, both for me personally and for the world at large, because people really, really loved that show, really responded incredibly well to it, and it was a game changer for almost everybody who participated in it. But I had some folks that I didn't get along with. I'm not going to lie, and it made it a little bit difficult, made it a little bit compromising. Because one's sensibilities about, you know, how grateful one should be to be a part of this incredible business, this unbelievable art form that we're basically just custodians of for the moment, that's being passed down from generation to generation. You know, there were some disparities that kind of rocked my sensibility, and I reacted to it, and there you go. And
in your book, you come off as a very direct, plain-spoken, frank individual. So, you know, I can only imagine in a kind of Hollywood world how maybe kind of plain-spoken New York, uptown Manhattan, you know, Washington Heights, basically tell it like it is type of attitude goes down. But I think a few things come clear in the book, that you are a guy that if somebody's in a room with you, they're gonna know what you think. They're not gonna leave the room wondering what's on your mind. You speak about custodians of the art form. You have had an opportunity to work with some remarkable individuals over the course of your career. Director Guillermo del Toro wrote the foreword to your book. Growing up, you had a friendship of sorts with Al Pacino. You've had the opportunity of work with Sean Connery and Marlon Brando. You've also spat in the face of one of these men. I won't mention who. People are going to have to buy Easy Street the hard way to find out. What, if anything, Ron, do these four men of artistic accomplishment have in common, if you kind of put them side by side? Is there a common thread? Is there a common thread with you in terms of the art form?
Not really sure what the question is. A common thread? I mean,
well, in other words, what makes great artistic personalities great? What makes Connery, Brando, Del Toro, Pacino, Perlman, or as you're called in the book, I think Guillermo del Toro calls you the Pearl. I always think of Earl the Pearl Monroe. Now forever, when I'm going to think of the Pearl, I'm going to think of Ron Perlman. But is there some kind of essence that a great actor has where a bunch of you guys get in a room together, you look at each other and you kind of have this knowing nod and you shake your head, like in the same kind of way people who've been in special forces in the military kind of have this knowing look in their eyes, and there's something inside of all of you. Comedy tragically wound up together, life toils, overcoming personal head ghosts, whatever it is, where there's something recognizable psychically, intrinsically about a human being that brings them to be able to deliver something artistically, or is that an overblown notion?
No, not at all. I think, the disparities among all of the artists that you named are dramatic, but the commonalities are singular, and that is every one of them is driven to demand the greatest that they can access from themselves. I mean, and when they're not operating at their greatest, they're very hard on themselves. So they train themselves to create a space for themselves where only greatness can, or where they set up a world where greatness is possible, and they demand it of themselves. Like if I have a day where I've done 100 takes on a movie, and 3 of them are bad, I'll remember those 3. I won't be able to sleep that night because of those 3. The other 97 won't matter. So, you watch great athletes like practice. You watch Tiger Woods finish 18 holes, and then it's 8:30 at night, and he's still on the driving range hitting golf balls, trying to figure out how he could possibly have hit that one bad shot. And so the kind of work that comes out of these guys who create these bodies of work, and I'm talking about lasting bodies of work that last throughout their entire careers, where there's not just moments of greatness, but there's always greatness. It's not random, and it's not a fluke, and it doesn't come from just like smoking cigarettes in between and chit-chatting with the girls. These guys are really putting a lot of time in. They're really approaching the thing with great demands being made on themselves personally, and they take it really seriously. That's the work, how they behave in their personal lives when the clock's not ticking and the camera's not rolling. It's a whole different thing, and that just changes from person to person. But that's the one thing that I could say runs through all the guys you mentioned.
As you're talking, I can almost envision you as the football coach who wins the game and yet goes back to look at the game film and just obsess over every single error, in perhaps the hope of never dealing with that error again. Perhaps such is the nature of striving for perfection It's like walking half the distance to the wall all the time, and if you only walk half the distance, you never actually get there, but you ever do get closer. And that your work, and it's interesting. In the beginning, I introduced this great Ron Perlman, and you kind of demur. It seems like you're almost uncomfortable with that title, but I just think, and I'm not a fanboy, but just to look at your body of work, it's hard after all these years not to look at your trajectory and put the adjective great in front of your name. You've had a remarkable life, certainly with ups and downs, bumps and bruises, but remarkable nonetheless. In your book, you do share. Go ahead.
No, I said I don't know anybody who hasn't had bumps and bruises. That's just the way life is.
But not everybody rises above. Not everybody delivers to society a body of work that, transcends the mundane. You talked about the banal before. Will you really look back? I mean, it's interesting. Yesterday I was having a lunch, and I mentioned to someone that I was going to be interviewing you. And all of a sudden, they just went on a riff about Beauty and the Beast. And I have more of your recent work in mind. And everybody got into a discussion about Beauty and the Beast. And if I remember this was on 2-3 seasons maybe? Linda Hamilton, she was on 2 seasons and then she was gone, I believe, at the end.
Mm-hmm.
But Ron, it could have been on television yesterday. How real it was to these people, and especially the women in the group, how you could tell that there was something in what you portrayed in Vincent that really touched a very, very particular need. So personally, I look at your work and I think greatness fits. So you do talk about a burden. You do share in the book, and that's one of having to manage your weight, something that's certainly no secret to many of us individually in the United States of America today. You had to manage your weight to get healthy so that you could get into and stay in college, or to fit into a costume later on. In Sons of Anarchy, you look strong and solid. How goes for you currently the Battle of the Bulge, and what, if anything, do you do in what for many of us is kind of an ongoing fight?
Well, if you leave me to my own devices, I'll get north of 300 easy because I'm just a foodie, and food for me is kind of maybe how alcohol is for others or how drugs are for others. It's where I go to either reward myself or act as a counterpoint to something tough I'm going through, something like that. And I just like it. I like chewing delicious food and swallowing it. And it has repercussions. I like all the wrong stuff. I love salt and sugar, and carbs and pasta. So, right now I'm in pretty good shape because I'm doing a new show for Amazon called Hand of God, and I'm playing a character on there who's in a bit of a crisis. And the way I'm choosing to show you the pressure he's under is by trying to lose like 15 pounds over the course of the shooting season, which I've never done before. The best thing I've ever done is maintain, and even that's difficult. But to try to lose weight while shooting a TV series and working, 12 to 16-hour days, that's a challenge. But here's the good news. I mean, commensurate with what you were just talking about, and the demands that one puts on oneself. The blessing of writing a book is being able to say, for me, the book was among many, many other things. Like Kareem Abdul-Jabbar's last cycle around the thing where everybody's thanking him, giving him standing ovation. I had to just thank everybody. I had to just thank the universe for this life. The life is fantastic, and even though, it's been difficult and a lot of the pressures that are on me are self-inflicted, they're for all the right reasons, and they're all in a quest to become the best at something I truly love and would do for free, even though I've made a living at it, that I possibly can. And so I finally get that, after all these years of being like a pinball and, you know, just bouncing off walls, I finally see that there's this unbelievable kind of wonderful aura around this life of mine. Even if it ends right now, it was great. And that there was huge amounts of joy mostly in the journey, not in the arrival, but in the journey. And that's the one thing I can control. I can't control how you're going to react to Beauty and the Beast or Hand of God or Sons of Anarchy. It's great when one reacts to it positively, but I've also been in about 150 clunkers that stink that nobody liked. And so, you know, the only thing I can control is the quality of the experience while I'm doing it and what it means to me and how it fills me. And, so, you know, just infuses me with huge amounts of life force, enthusiasm, joy, and there it is. That's the whole. That's to me. That's the whole point of Easy Street. You know?
Well, and you know, I'd say, having read the book, it seems to me also to be this, and you summed it up very nicely, but this lifelong path to develop a sense of authentic self-esteem in the face of existential doubt, personal doubt, and a lot of things many of us go through. And I really, really thought in reading it, and I said, you know, this would be a tremendous book to be assigned reading to junior high students who are at that very, very vulnerable age. And, you know, it's remarkable. I'm a bit younger than you. You were born, I believe, in 1950. I was born 10 years later. But it to me, junior high school and all the doubt and the poor self-image and the acne and the big feet and the this and the that and going forward in life later on, seeing myself as the kind of gangly, pimple-faced kid and, you know, voices in the background of kids making fun and so forth. And I really, when I read your book, I kind of got this feeling, and maybe I was projecting too much, I don't know, but I got this feeling of this man struggling against these kind of apparitions in the head based on, you know, how you perceived yourself, how you perceived yourself aesthetically, how you perceived yourself as you fit in the later work you've done. And I think that you've summed up so well that could we say you've come to a point, I don't want to say at peace, but you've come to a point of wisdom where you look back at your life and you realize the trials and travails have been for a reason.
I would safely agree with all that. I would say that I'm at a point right now where the house is in order, which is what one hopes for. If one, you know, especially somebody who, you know, lost his dad when he was 49 and his brother when he was 38, realizes, I got to live every minute like it's my last, because it just might be. I've seen it happen. You don't get a chance to choose what your last minute is going to be. So, I would say that if it all ended right now, it'd be just fantastic, just fine. Because
so you've gotten to that. I don't know if we want to call it nirvana, but you've gotten to that place on earth where you can say, to a certain extent, I'm satisfied, and I've made peace with certain of my demons. And that, and again, it hasn't. It's been the hard way. It's been with the trials and travails. You mentioned Hand of God. You say that's on Amazon. Any upcoming projects you want to mention? There are always rumors out there about a third edition of Hellboy. Anything else you can reveal or want to reveal that may or may not be coming up in the amazing journey of Ron Perlman?
Don't have any new news about Hellboy, even though I'm still hammering away at the powers that be and saying it was always intended to be a trilogy. It's essential that we finish the story. Whether that comes to pass or not, again, unfortunately not in my control. Starting my own movie studio, which I mentioned in the book, and when I wrote the book, it was just underway. Now it's well underway. We have movies in production. We have movies that are coming out in theaters, and that is going to be the final labor of love for me, is to create an environment where the dog is wagging the tail, not the other way around, where the storytellers are kind of the ones that are in control of the art form, rather than the art form is just some sort of diabolical marketing platform. And that's
or to just put in a kind of short way, take back Hollywood from the suits, or maybe kind of kick Hollywood's butt a little bit out of art and bring art back to art.
Well, the suits are essential, but there are suits and then there are suits. You know, there are suits who, like the original moguls, really became passionate proponents of the great literature that one could put on the screen, and kept topping themselves by, yeah, well, you got F. Scott Fitzgerald, but I got Hemingway. Yeah, but I got Faulkner. Yeah, but I'm going to do some Shakespeare. What do you think? And you know,
yeah, and you mentioned this in the book.
And that was the competition back then, was to how to be more original, how to be more of a lightning rod to finding out the commonality of mankind, which is what the art form is at its most sublime, rather than how to take the audience on some sort of a ride that they may as well go to Six Flags for than a movie theater. It's just a marketplace right now that is unrecognizable by guys who came up with the values I did, and so I'm going to try to create an environment that mirrors more of the periods that I really admired, like the mid-'60s to the end of the '70s, that gave way to Mike Nichols and Coppola and Scorsese and De Palma and Ashby and all these amazing Friedkin and all these amazing original voices. And we're seeing it happen right now in cable television. So it's not as if the public doesn't still thirst for things that are original and edgy and unpredictable and mind-bogglingly exciting. It's just that we're not seeing it. We're seeing it in a different art form than we used to. We're seeing it now on television with all these new startup companies like Amazon, like Netflix, like Hulu, like Google, that are all getting into original programming. And the way that they're getting everyone's attention is by being more original than the last guy. So that's why it's an exciting time in television right now, and that's why I insist on continuing to work in television right now, because the writing is great and the storytelling is expansive and brilliant. But I'm still a movie guy, and so I'm determined to see if I can help contribute to an environment where we can get audiences to start going back to the theaters again. I don't know. Something makes me think that you'll be able to do it if you have, I think, half as much success as you've had. And when I use the term success, I don't. Again, the way you speak, you have a very philosophical view of things. I think you've had a very, very successful acting career in when it comes to artistic integrity and authenticity. That doesn't necessarily mean you're out there walking around with $100 million or $200 million, but in terms of the body of art you've created, I think it is beyond question a superb offering for any discerning eye if you're able to bring that, and I think you can, into the creation of movies. It's funny how now that I'm doing it, now that I'm producing and I'm fundraising and I'm trying to attract talent, I'm trying to put projects, from the idea form into reality, three-dimensional. There's a lot of, it's amazing how this town is wired to bet against you, to bet against that. And if Easy Street the Hard Way, that book is if there's one kind of outlying fact that I learned from writing it is that, you know, it's really easy to bet against something. It's way easier to bet against something than it is to bet for something, unless you stack the deck and you make it a fixed fight. It's like that great line in Mr. Smith Goes to Washington, where at the end, where James Stewart finally gets to Claude Rains and says, "You used to believe the lost cause was the only cause worth fighting for." That was. I remember sitting at my dad's knee when I first heard that line, and watching a tear come to his eye. You know.
Well, I think for you, though, this will be more than a Quixote-esque struggle. In the end, it wasn't simply a Quixote-esque struggle for Mr. Smith. So, I mean,
no.
Let's keep artistic hope alive. I thank you so very much, Ron. It's really been a distinct pleasure.
Great conversation. Thank you.
That does it for this CY interview. Again, if you haven't bought Easy Street the hard way, buy it now. I'm serious. It's an absolute must-read. So, for Ron Perlman and CY Interview, I'm Jay Bildstein.